Welcome back, cadets. I am Professor Eclipse, and I am excitedly counting down the days to Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. The past couple of videos, I have covered Ghostbusters 1 and 2, so if you haven't seen those, be sure to go check them out. But today, we're going to be branching out just a bit into another piece of Ghostbusters media, 2009's Ghostbusters, the video game. Between 1989 and 2009, there was constantly talks about a third Ghostbusters movie. Anytime it was brought up, Dan Aykroyd would say that they're working on it, but nothing ever came out of it. Behind the scenes, Bill Murray was really frustrated with the way Ghostbusters 2 turned out, so he refused to be a part of any potential Ghostbusters sequel, and without him, a sequel is pretty much dead in the water. The whole will they, won't they went on for years, and during that time, the only Ghostbusters content we really got was a sequel to the animated series called Extreme Ghostbusters, which I may discuss in a future video if there's enough interest, so be sure to let me know in the comments if you want that. In 2007, a company called Terminal Reality met with Sony and got the green light to develop a Ghostbusters video game. The game had officially been announced in 2007 for a 2008 release, but then a merger with Activision Blizzard initially caused a concern for Ghostbusters the video game as it fell into limbo. Unlike the third movie, though, the game didn't stay in limbo for long. Atari picked up the publishing rights and the game finally released in June of 2009. The game once again brought the original team back together for a brand new Ghostbusters story with us, the player, as the silent rookie of the team. Up until the point where Afterlife was announced, Ghostbusters the video game was the official canon third story in the Ghostbusters franchise. The entire runtime of the game is roughly 6 hours or so I won't be covering every tiny little minute detail, but let's jump into it and see how much we can fit into this video. The game begins in 1991, 2 years after the events of Ghostbusters 2, with a cold open just like in the films. This time around, we're at the museum. A security guard is watching television, and an ad for Ghostbusters kicks things off, setting the tone for the game. On the security camera, a ghost appears to be moving from screen to screen, and the security guard tells one of the other guards that's walking the floor that something's heading his way. The other guard is walking around the museum's Gozer exhibit, which was donated by Ivo Shandor, the cultist from the first film who built Dana Barrett's apartment building. The guard finds a girl running out of the building and carrying a handful of books. He tries to stop her, but a wave of spectral energy blasts out of the museum, leading to our title card. At the Ghostbusters firehouse, Egon and Ray are working on the proton packs, and we're introduced to the rookie, who's played by us. Peter says it's best not to learn our names after what happened to the last guy. The psionic pulse pushes through the firehouse, shutting down the visual containment unit that was holding Slimer. The Ghostbusters attempt to trap him, but he escapes and heads back to the Sedgwick Hotel, and the Ghostbusters follow. At the hotel, Egon scans the place and notes that the PKE energy isn't limited to the 12th floor as expected. The rookie heads up to the 12th floor with Ray and Peter to face Slimer, but he gets away again, making it down to the lobby where other ghosts have appeared. The energy pulse kicked up a spectral hornet's nest, and now ghosts are popping up all over the hotel. Slimer heads to the ballroom where he was originally trapped in the first movie, and the Ghostbusters recapture him, but a bigger threat looms over them as the fisherman ghost appears, turning portions of the hotel into an oceanic hellscape. Once the fisherman ghost is captured, though, the team hears rumbling from outside. Winston arrives and tells the team over the radio that the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man has returned. Stay Puft seems to be looking for something, or someone in particular. The Ghostbusters make it across Times Square and into the building that Stay Puft seemed interested in, finding the woman that was at the Gozer exhibit when the energy pulse was unleashed. Stay Puft seems to be after her for some reason. The group makes it up to the roof where the rookie gets the privilege of hanging over the side of the building and fighting Stay Puft directly. He manages to take Stay Puft out by making him fall down from the building and splat across the ground. The woman introduces herself as Dr. Alyssa Selwyn. She's doing research on Gozer as a guest curator for the museum. She goes with the group back to the firehouse where they run some tests on her and determine that they need to go to the museum to conduct more research, but Walter Peck and the new mayor quickly arrive. The mayor forces the team to work with Peck, who was hired as the head of Peacock, the Paranormal Contracts Oversight Commission. Naturally, Peck is a thorn in the Ghostbusters' side and wants to introduce bureaucracy into their work, which hinders the team's ability to do their jobs properly. On the way to the museum, though, the Ghostbusters are called to take a detour to the New York Public Library, where they stumble across a hidden and abandoned section of the library where the Grey Lady is. They discover the Gozerian Codex, which the rookie is called to take from the Grey Lady. Naturally, this upsets her quite a bit, and then the Ghostbusters have to trap her. But then a multi-dimensional portal opens. The team steps through the gateway into a different dimension that looks like a hellish version of the library. Eventually, the Ghostbusters make it out of the ghost dimension, but not before fighting Azytlor. Edmund Hoover was a serial killer of the library that killed Eleanor Twitty. He was also a cultist that followed Evo Shandor and was known as the Collector. Hoover was granted eternal life and transformed into the Sumerian demigod known as Azytlor, where he ruled over the library in the ghost world. After their encounter with Azytlor, they note a symbol on the wall. Once they're back at the firehouse, Alyssa explains that the symbol is seen throughout Sumerian history as a way to obtain great power. She goes on to explain that Evo Shandor's estate is responsible for the Gozer donations to the museum. It's revealed that he also did some renovations across the city, including the Sedgwick Hotel and the New York Public Library. The Ghostbusters then head to the museum where they come across Dr. Rutherford, the assistant curator of the museum, as well as the Possessor Ghost, which takes over Ray's body. Once the rookie and the others free Ray, they get back to work. The group makes it to the lobby where Peck tries to get them thrown out, but Alyssa gets possessed, along with a handful of other guests, including Peck himself. The team clears out the Possessor Ghost and goes after the big guy, a ghost known as the Chairman, who took Alyssa. They make their way through the museum and Peter rescues Alyssa. Egon makes a discovery that the ghost world is pushing through into their world, at which point the Chairman reappears and tries to take Alyssa again, but fails after being hit by mood slime. The mayor appears, scolding the Ghostbusters, and Peck chimes in accusing them of being scam artists who wanted to ruin his career. The Ghostbusters attempt to explain what's happening, and the mayor tells them to do their job and stop the Chairman. The team activates a secret staircase that leads to a tunnel network beneath the museum that acts as a conduit for spiritual energy. While making their way through the area, Ray notes that the place looks familiar. This is most likely where the river of slime was running through the museum back during the events of Ghostbusters 2. They then battle the Chairman, eventually trapping him. Back in the lobby, Walter Peck threatens to shut down the containment unit and uses his authority to shut down the Ghostbusters. Egon does a PKE scan and notes that they need to keep an eye on him. He's probably possessed. Back at the firehouse, the group is looking over the symbols again, and they realize that it's a mandala that feeds energy into a destructor form. They also note that the mandala matches up with locations on the city map where they have seen increased spiritual activity: the library, the museum, and the Sedgwick. And a fourth node's located somewhere in the Hudson River. They head back to the hotel and check it out, and then discover that it's been closed until further notice by Peacock, and the sign specifically notes that the Ghostbusters aren't allowed inside. Naturally, they go in anyway and conduct research, eventually making their way to the 12th floor and coming across the Spider Witch. The ghost world pushes into the real world again, and the team makes it up to the 13th floor, which is where the real lair of the Spider Witch is. Once they defeat the witch, the third node is destroyed, leaving the node in the Hudson River as the last one for the Ghostbusters to take out. Sometime later, the group is on a boat in the Hudson River. An island appears from below the water, revealing Shandor Island. The team explores the island and discovers a painting within Shandor's castle that depicts someone that looks just like Alyssa. The lady in the painting is Evo Shandor's mother. Alyssa inadvertently activated the mandalas due to her Shandor blood. They then come across a room filled with vats of different kinds of slime, and Winston notes that the island is where all the mood slime must have originated and was pumped from the island to the sewers. The team makes it to a room with a device known as an orrery. That is a really hard word to say. Usually it's a device that's used to chart the alignment of planets, but this one is aligning dimensions. It begins to emit copious amounts of black slime, which then summons a juvenile Slore. The Slore was mentioned briefly by Louis Tully in the first movie while he was possessed by the Keymaster. With some luck, the team manages to take down the monster and shut down the final mandala node, but doing so destabilizes the island, causing it to sink back into the depths of the Hudson River. The team makes it back to the firehouse, and it's in shambles. Janine explains that Alyssa was taken by somebody and the containment unit was shut down, releasing all the ghosts from the containment unit. The group jumps to assuming Walter Peck is to blame, which makes sense considering that he threatened to do so after their last encounter. Breaking news interrupts the team, noting that tremors are rocking Central Park. When the Ghostbusters make it there, they're met with a gigantic sky beam in the middle of the park, with the rest of the park being converted into a ghoulish graveyard filled with ghosts. The team makes their way through the cemetery, and Ray makes a passing remark on how Gozer returning as the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man didn't initially make sense to him, but now he believes that Gozer is limited to one destructor form per dimension and was locked into the form of the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man after their first encounter. The Ghostbusters then make it to the tower where the sky beam is emanating from. Inside, they find Walter Peck and Alyssa. Both of them are chained up, and the mayor reveals himself as the real villain. But it's not actually the mayor, because he's been possessed the whole time. That's right, the mayor is Ivo Shandor. He used the power of the mayor to sick Walter Peck on the team to slow them down, and then when the Ghostbusters were able to destroy his mandalas before he came to full power, he took the ghost from the containment unit as an alternate source of energy. Initially, he built all of this for Gozer, but gave up on the Destructor after he failed to conquer the world twice. He then decided to use the energy to create a Destructor form for himself. The team blast Shandor and attempt to cross the stream so they can close the gate, but they fail and are pulled into the ghost world. Shandor then chooses his own Destructor form, naming himself as the Architect. Ghost World then begins to break apart, revealing Shandor's Destructor form as a giant burning demonic entity. The Ghostbusters battle the Architect and manage to defeat him, crossing the streams and blowing the Architect apart while simultaneously thrusting them through the closing portal back into their own world. Everything seems to revert back to normal, and Peter reveals to Alyssa that she's a Shandor before he kisses her. Then, Slimer appears, sliming Alyssa, and that's it. The story ends with the Ghostbusters once again saving the day, and in the credits, the team mentions that the ghost activity slowing down means they might have one Ghostbuster too many on the team. They low-key suggest that the rookie could lead his own franchise in another city. As far as the overall story goes, it's a solid addition to the Ghostbusters lore, even if it does end up being not necessarily canon after the events of Afterlife. While Afterlife doesn't necessarily remove the game from canon, it also doesn't do anything to make sure that it is canon either. It's hotly debated within the fandom as to whether the video game really is canon or not. For some, it's more canon than Afterlife simply because it's the last time that the original cast were all together, as Harold Ramis died before another Ghostbusters film could officially get off the ground. To others, it doesn't make sense to take it as canon because in Afterlife we see both Ivo Shandor himself as well as Gozer, and that story doesn't directly line up with how things went down in the video game. While I really want to believe that it's canon, I believe what actually happens is that the canon branches in two different directions. On one hand, we have 1, 2, and Afterlife, and then on the other, we have 1, 2, the video game, and then the entirety of the IDW comic series, which is a whole other video worth of content all by itself. I love Ghostbusters the video game, though. In 2019, we were lucky enough to receive a remastered edition of the game completely by chance when a hard drive containing the original game code was found. I only have a small handful of complaints when it comes to this game and the story itself. It really seems like the Alyssa character was actually meant to be Dana, and from all available accounts, that's pretty much the case. Sigourney Weaver was initially approached and she declined, but then she found out that Bill Murray would be returning to reprise his role and she changed her mind. But by then the studio was too late into their development cycle to be able to have Dana Barrett in the story. If she was in the story, I imagine the bulk of the main plot would have remained largely unchanged, and Dana's connection to Ivo Shandor would have simply acted as a way to explain why all these supernatural occurrences always seem to be happening to her. The team also tried to get Rick Moranis to reprise his role as Louis Tully, but at the time, Moranis was still retired from acting. Ghostbusters the video game remains to this day one of the coolest entries into the Ghostbusters franchise. It does an amazing job of explaining the lore, it shows new and upgraded equipment, and ultimately, if we had never gotten Afterlife, it would have been a perfect Ghostbusters 3 as we could have possibly gotten. But what do you think? Do you ever play this game? Do you think it's still canon? Let me know in the comments and we can chat about it. In the next video, I'll be covering the most recent film in the franchise, Ghostbusters Afterlife. I'm sure some people are curious as to whether I'll also be covering the 2016 film Answer the Call. I won't be. It's not canon, and while it's not the worst movie I've ever seen in my life, it's also just an incredibly divisive film that I just don't have any personal interest in. But anyway, if you like this video, feel free to hit that like button, and if you want to see more content like this, be sure to subscribe so you know when those videos come out. Until next time, though, I'm Professor Eclipse, signing off.